Film reviews: Hereditary, The Happy Prince, Studio 54 and the Ciambra. After years in the doldrums, the horror movie is making a comeback. Get Out won an Oscar. Night Shyamalan returned to the genre last year with Split, and the excellent The Cured used the zombie movie to explore post-Troubles Ireland. And Hereditary is a beautifully shot, brilliantly acted and smartly written supernatural chiller which suggests we are entering a new golden age of the scary movie. Toni Collette plays Annie Graham, a troubled artist who constructs miniature models of buildings in her attic studio. Her elderly mother has just died in the upstairs bedroom, leaving behind a collection of strange books about the spirit world. In a powerful speech at a support group, Annie reveals a family history of mental illness and relates how her mother subjected her to years of emotional abuse. This could explain why she is finding it so hard to grieve and is neglecting her 2 children by hiding away in her studio. Her miniature world, it seems, is the only realm she can control. But it is not just Annie who had been badly affected by the old lady. When her haunted-looking daughter Charlie, Millie Shapiro, sees a pigeon crash into her classroom window, she nips out and snips its head off with a pair of scissors, adding it to a weird collection of totems she is amassing. And when she appears to see Granny alive and well, we wonder whether this is a manifestation of the spirit world or whether the old family curse of mental illness has struck. Meanwhile, her son Peter, Alex Wolff, seems strangely detached from his grandmother's death. But all is not well between him and his odd mother. And when Annie starts contacting the other side, his laid-back father, Gabriel Byrne, suspects his wife is finally descending into madness. But to say any more would spoil the fun. Hereditary offers very different types of chills to recent horror series such as Saw, Insidious or Annabelle. There is no torture scene, no jump scares, no ill-advised trips to a dark basement, and at no point does an antique children's toy suddenly spring into life. First-time director Ari Aster is influenced by the gritty family horror of the late 1960s and early 1970s, and the writing and acting are shockingly good for a horror film. Like The Exorcist, The Omen, and Rosemary's Baby, Hereditary takes its time getting around to the supernatural. But after the first shock, which is one of the grimmest scenes I have ever seen in a horror movie, the slow build-up begins to pay off. If we hadn't become so invested in these characters, the second half of the film would appear laughably over the top, but here the supernatural feels horribly real. It took Rupert Everett 10 years to make his film about Oscar Wilde's final years. And you can feel that burning passion in his brilliant performance as the writer and famous wit. On this evidence, if Everett hadn't wasted his best years hanging around with Madonna in New York, he would now be recognized as one of this nation's finest living actors. Everett, who wrote and directed the film, ambitiously frames it with Wilde's story of the Happy Prince. In flashbacks, Wilde tells the story to his own children in London and to 2 street urchins in Paris, where he fled after serving a 2-year sentence at Reading Jail for gross indecency with men. There is also a long middle section where Wilde's lover Bosie, an excellent Colin Morgan, joins him in Naples, where they bicker and blow through the young aristocrat's allowance. Wilde fans will no doubt pore over every beautifully lit frame. Despite Everett's brilliant performance, I am less convinced of Everett's talents as a writer and director. He is clearly outraged by the injustice of Wilde's fall from grace, but never quite forges an emotional connection with the audience. This engrossing documentary takes us through the doors of Studio 54, the almost mythical New York nightclub that was the ultimate celebrity hangout of the late 1970s. As director Matt Tiernauer reveals, its meteoric rise was as much down to the queue outside the club as what happened on the dance floor. The club operated a brutal door policy, turning people away for not being famous or fashionable enough, so there was always a huge crowd outside on the street, clamoring to get in while news crews filmed them. And the more ruthless the bouncers became, the more people wanted to get in. Tiernauer also sits down with Ian Schrager, one of the club's 2 founders. His flamboyant partner Steve Rubel died in 1989, so it falls to this self-confessed introvert to talk us through the club's rise and fall. What he reveals feels more suited to a blockbuster, as the club's eventful 33-month reign involved drugs, intrigue, debauchery, fraud, and even the mafia. Tiernauer never shies away from asking the difficult questions, and you feel Schrager has waited decades to get all of this off his chest. Timothy Spall reveals hidden talents and an unexpected dark side in this bizarre indie drama. The film, co-written with director Stephen Cookson, is a one-man show that Spall has described as a cross between Kind Hearts and Coronets and Eraserhead. Here Spall plays what appears to be the sole inmate in a psychiatric hospital who hallucinates encounters with several icons of British comedy. The makeup is excellent, but Spall's impressions are a mixed bag. His Max Wall and Tony Hancock are entertaining, but George Formby seems off-key. Spall's enthusiastic turns aren't enough to power a feature film. With better jokes and a much tighter plot, this might have been a less difficult watch. This fascinating Italian drama explores a Romani community where a 14-year-old boy called Pio Amato, is desperate to become head of the family after his father and older brother are sent to jail for burglary. Writer-director Jonas Carpinino is working very much in the Italian neorealist tradition, using amateur actors and shooting in the Ciambra, the Romani ghetto in Gioia Tauro in Calabria. He captures a community in transition where the nomadic lifestyle known to Pio's grandfather is coming to an end, and the Roma are eking out a living as hired thieves for local crime lords. The plot feels loose, but the performances are mesmerizing.